Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube. Today we're doing Daf Kesubos Lamed Aleph number 31. Just Daf It is the official name of the Shir. Uh, this really is Shabbos' Daf. But, of course, uh, Shabbos is, you can't give a Shir. I'm with my camera on Shabbos. And Motzei Shabbos is Tisha B'Av. You can't learn. Technically, I'm also going to try to give Lam the base today, and that's Sunday's daf. My parents said, "What do you mean? You can learn after Chatzos on Tisha B'Av. You can learn." I don't know if that's the halacha. The way I remember learning the halacha is that you can learn the whole day, but it makes sense. Certain things you can start sitting on chairs, on beds, or whatever after Chatzos, so maybe you can learn also. So that's not for Ian to lean on from Ben Seal. You need to lean on from my parents. I gave you a het there over there. Gotta ask your Rav, of course. But it sounds like an interesting svara, but I didn't see it in the Mishnah Berurah. Alright, let's get started. Get the right angle over here. Alright. We're on the bottom of Lamed Amud Beis, and we're trying to figure out a case where it's Kimle B'derabamine by Misa B'dei Shamayim. Somehow you ate Truma and you did Geneva or Nezek, we'll see, at the same time. You have Mammon and Misa at the same time, so your potter, according to one opinion, according to Abaya, your potter even Misa B'dei Shamayim, not just curries, eating Truma, right? B'mezid, a zar she eats Truma, it's chayav Misa B'dei Shamayim. So if you do Geneva, you do Nezek at the same time, you potter for the Mammon. What's the case? So the Gemara gave one case yesterday that someone stuck it in your mouth and you couldn't. It was very hard for you to regurgitate it. Rav Papa Amar, 3 lines at the bottom. If you didn't give him a bowl of porridge, you gave him some wine, Truma wine, right? And what's the difference? Why does that help you over here? The idea is, there's a bit of an explanation, but I think the correct explanation is as opposed to food where you could maybe ostensibly claim that the hana is the me'ayim, is only when and someone sticks something down your food, maybe you don't benefit in your throat, you only benefit when it's in your stomach. Here you benefit by drinking something. There's no hana of satiation. You're not normally satiated by liquids. I think Martin Brachos does say if you drink a lot of wine, maybe you are, but normally you're not. So you're not satiated. Migra Garer, the Gemara says, causes you to have more of an appetite. So the hana is in your blia, and you're swallowing it. So therefore, when he sticks it into your mouth, right? So you're swallowing it at the same time that you are violating the issur of eating truma, you're also stealing. Ravashi Amar Bizar Shachal Truma Mishalo. Ravashi says we're talking about a zar, not that he's a non-Kohen. He eats his own truma. Let's say he was mafresh truma, but didn't give it to a Kohen yet, or something like that. So it's his own truma. Technically, it doesn't belong to the Kohen until he gives it. It belongs in general to Kohanim, but it belongs to him. Let's say, so he's not chayiv for Geneva in that case. He's chayiv, so he ate the truma. The kara, the top of Lamed Aleph and Aleph, the kara shirayin shachavero. While he's swallowing, Rashi says it's going to be important. While he's swallowing, because everyone agrees that hanas garon when you're swallowing it. There may be also hanas menayim by food, but really the ikar hana of eating is when you swallow it. That's the most enjoyment. So at the same time he's swallowing, he rips his friend's silk. His friend's silk underwear. Yeah, silk underwear. He ripped his friend's silk underwear. And so once he ripped it, so therefore he's chayiv for nezek at the same time that he's chayiv for misa. So therefore, it's kimla b'derabmine. Gufa. Amar of Chista. Amor of Nechemia Akana Begon of Chalva Shachavero. V'achla. If you steal the chaylev of your friend and you eat it, shul chayiv. Shekarnis chayiv b'gnei b'kol shul chaylev. Stealing precedes chaylev of this or kares. So you're chayiv before. And lema pligi to Rabbi Abin. Say Rav Nechunya or Rav Chista argues on Rabbi Abin. The Amar Rabbi Abin has already chayes metikilas arba so far, but v'kares shirayim and b'hali chasa. Let's say you want to practice your bow and arrow on Shabbos. You go to the bow and arrow range. I don't know what that's called. Practice your bullseye. You want to get the bullseye. And, to make it more interesting, someone hung up their silk underwear in between you and the bullseye. So you send the arrow. Mitchilas arbel is so far, but you're outside. You're just a rabin, right? In the field or whatever. It's just a rabin. A lot of people pass there, and the arrow, as on its way to the bullseye, rips the silk, right? And the silk belongs to somebody else, to your friend. Potter. Rabin says you're potter. Shakira Sarach Hanacha, because the svara is that on Shabbos, right, Akira and Hanacha are both integral to being Mechayev. When you carry something, there's two ways you're Chayev for Hotzah on Shabbos. One is that you take something out from Shul Rabim to Shul Yachid, or take from Shul Yachid to Shul Rabim. And then there's carrying Dalan Amos Shul Rabim, Maver Dalan Amos Shul Rabim. The Gemara also says in Shabbos is considered to be a violation of Hotzah, Havara, it's a tolda of Hotzah. So when you do a Dalit Amos, or you throw something, or you shoot something, or you walk with something, and you stop after Dalit Amos in Rosh Hashanah, you're chayav for carrying already Havara Dalit Amos Sharabim. So Akira Sarach Hanacha, the Akira goes along with the Hanacha. There's a couple of ways of explaining it. We're going to lay out the two ways of explaining it. I'm going to elaborate more on Ian Ben Sio, on the Ian part of the Shir. One way of understanding Akira Sarach Hanacha is that since Dalit Amos maybe is a little technically different than Hotzah and Achnasa, the Akira and the Hanacha are both integral over there when you're in Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, it's like one act. The Akira needs the Hanacha because those are integral parts. So therefore, the 4 Amos that it travels is like one. It happened, even though it took 2 or 3 seconds for it to happen. It happened in 1 second. It happened right at that time. Well, the Akira Sarach Hanacha means that since the Akira needs the Hanacha, so already at the Akira, right, when you start throwing it, you're already Chayiv in Shabbos. The nafkamina is, we're going to talk about whether, we said if you have the Chi of Mammon before the Chi of Nefashos, before the Chi of, that you're Chayiv Mises based in, so then you're Chayiv for both. However, what about if you have the Chi of Mises based in, and then soon thereafter, you have a Chi of Mammon, or someone who was already Chayiv Mises based in and goes and mazik or steals something from his friend, right? Not b'basach, not exactly the same time. Does this tour of Kim Levi have to be b'basachas, or just do you need the misa to come first? So that's the two studim over here. So let's just take the simple explanation. I'll take the explanation that I believe is the correct shot, that you need b'basachas. That's what I'm going to come out in Yud Ben Tzin. I'll discuss. I'll prove it for you in Yud Ben Tzin. Shakira Sarach Hanachi happens one time. Hakanam hakba Sarach Achili. Here also, when you take the chaylev and you pick it up in order to eat it, right, it's also one motion, it's one action. So therefore, even technically, when you pick it up, you're already chayav for geneva. You did a kinyan hagba, but it's one motion. Akira sarach hanacha, it's one motion, and you're eating it. So the Gemara differentiates. No, hakiyash asam yevshal hanacha v'lo akira. When it comes to dalit amos sharabim, right, you can't have hanacha without akira. Hakiyash akira lo hagba. Here, you don't have to pick it up in order to eat it. You can bend down to the ground and eat it without doing a gneva. So therefore, the gneva is independent of the achila. Right, when it comes to zorik ches, when you're shooting the arrow, you can't stop time and take the arrow, go to the arrow and take it and bring it back. No, the arrow is shot. You can't bring it back. What you can do by when you pick up something chaylev to eat it, before you put it in your mouth, you can stop and return it to its place. So therefore, they're not considered to be b'basach at the same time. And the geneva precedes the achila. Ma'ika bein hay lishna l'hay lishna. What's the practical difference between the two different distinctions? What did Rabbi Abin say? Not that you shot the arrow, but you took a knife. You took a knife, and you were walking with your knife in Rosh Hashanah. Obviously, you were going to the carving station to take off some pastrami, corned beef from the big slab of meat. So you're carrying Rosh Hashanah. You know, the kiddush they make outside, outdoors, in America. You know, especially when there's not enough room inside, so you make the kiddush. You have the carving station, so you carry the knife in Rosh Hashanah, probably in the big street. I remember when I was growing up in Hillcrest, Queens, they used to have the Simchas Torah kiddush outside of the street. So I don't think they had carving stations at that point, but I think maybe it's more prevalent nowadays, more affluence, especially in the 5 towns. So, so the Gemara says, what's the difference? Right? On the way to the carving station, they accidentally ripped, right, some silk. I don't know, maybe one was wearing some silk blouse or something like that. He ripped the side of the silk blouse. Lahachlish the Amar Yevshar Lanaka below Akira. Hakanami Yevshar Lanaka below Akira. Right? According to the distinction that we said before, the Hanacha needs an Akira, right? It's the nature of Dalan Amos is a unique thing that Hanacha needs the Akira. Here also, it's Akira Hanacha Ma'aber Dalam Sharabim. Lahachlish the Amar Lamatzim Mahadla, Lamatzim Mahadla. When you're shooting an arrow, you can't take it back. When you're carrying a knife, you can just decide to stop and walk back. Gufa. Amar Rabbi Avin. Azor Kes Ptilos Varbo Sof Arba Bakari Shar Malachas Potter Shakira Sarach Hanachi. Mezer Rabbi Bibi Barabaye. Rabbi Bibi Barabaye asked the following question. I'm going to Kis B'Shab is Chayiv. Shkarn is Chayiv. B'Gnei V'Kom Shabbat Yisur Skila. You steal someone's purse. You already ripped her blouse. Now you're stealing her purse. Chayiv. You're Chayiv. You go into her house and you steal it. Shkarn is Chayiv. B'Gnei V'Kom Shabbat Yisur Skila. When you picked it up in her house, you did a kinyan agbal. You can do a kinyan agbal even in the rishus of the bailam. And when you're chayav skila for taking it out, when you leave the front door, I am a gar v'yotze. If he was dragging it out, he didn't pick it up, he didn't do a kinyan agbal. Pater shar yisur shalat gneva b'anka achad, right? Because the kinyan gneva happens when you do a mashicha, when you take it out of the house, right? You can't do a mashicha inside the house, and you also have the same simultaneously. You're violated Shabbos by taking it out of the house. Take it out. We'll see. It's going into Mishra Yachid to Sharabim. Why should we say that? We should say also Hakba is for the intention of Sarah Chatzahi. So therefore, even when I picked it up, you should be pater. The reason you're not chayav the Hakba Sarah Chatzah is because you picked it up on condition. You didn't want to steal it originally. You just wanted to hide it for the lady in her house, so no one would steal her purse. But Nimlachal, he changed his mind. He became a Rasha and he started to steal it. No, it's you, and he took it out. The Gemara says, "Are you chayav?" It's Shakesha Amar Rav Simon, Amar Rav Ami, Amar Rav Yochanan. I'm a fan of chafatzim mizavis zavis. V'nimlachal emotzi and potter. If you're in your house, you're not chayav for hotzah. If when you pick something up, you start, you're trying to figure out where to put things, rearrange your house, put things in order. And then you said, you know what? In the middle, while you're walking around, you're trying to figure things out. You said, I'll take it outside, right? Pater, Akira Mishas Rishon Lakach. Your Akira was not with intention. You have to have Akira Nacha. The Akira with the intention to take it out, right? Even if it's a Tanai by Hotzah, the Akira and the Hanacha, they're just Tanoim, they're just rules that you have to abide by. The main part is the taking out from the Shtayachid Sharabim. Still, the Akira is still an integral part. You didn't do a good Akira over here because you planned on not taking it outside. You planned on just moving around in the house, which is not a malacha. He didn't pick it up to take it to the purse in order to hide it. He picked it up at Lotzio. So then why don't we say Hakba is Sorah Chotza? The Gemara says Ksha'amad. We're talking about where he stopped, right? He picked it up and he stopped inside the house. So again, he's lacking an akira. Amad lamai. Why was he standing? If he's just rearranging. It was a pretty big purse, She had lots of money in there. She just took a big withdrawal from the bank. She took out $100 million from the bank and stuffed. They have briefcases, maybe $100,000, $1 million. She has a purse, a small purse. It's a Michael Kors purse. It wasn't that big. I mean, Michael Kors makes big ones, but not that big, So, ilakatef orchehu. That's normal, right? If you're walking and you just rearrange the packaging on your back, that's not called stopping. You wanted to rest. That's considered stopping. So therefore you stopped. And therefore, you can't say that the Hagba was a Sarah Chotzah because the Chotzah starts not when you picked it up. The Chotzah starts when you resume carrying it after you rested. So it's not connected. You can't say Hakba Sarah Chotzah. You see from that the Gemara even suggests Hakba Sarah Chotzah, right? But there were two suggestions by Chaylev over there. One is that you can bring it back, and one is the reason that you're chayav for the Gnei over there. It's not considered Hakba Sarah Achila. One suggestion is because you could bend down and eat it, so you don't have to pick it up. And the other suggestion is that you can return it. So obviously, you see the one returning it just falls off. We don't hold like that anymore. Obviously, the main answer is that you could eat it over here. You can't eat it. You want to take it out, so you can't bend down and eat it. So you have to hakbah. That's why the Gemara persists. Hakbah sarach sahi. That's going to be important in the Ben Sion. So in other words, only lafash aval kasef mai. What if you stood to rearrange the packaging? What would be the halacha? You'd be potter. Right? Because of kim lebed. So therefore, if that's true, top of laman aleph on the base, at the time megar v'yotze. When the Seifa says that you're dragging it, you're potter because of kim lebed if log v'nistim bedida. Should say a better distinction. What do you have to talk about a case of Mashiach? Even if he just picks it up and he stops, right? He stops just to rearrange the packaging, rearrange the purse on her shoulder. She's potter. Elahamani ben Azai. The Gemara goes back. Okay, it must be saying this price of this Mishnah is ben Azai. Damar Mahalik Omed Dami. Right? Mahalik, walking is like you're stopping. Ben Azai, the interesting shita that. But they technically you can never be chayiv for carrying dalat amos sharab. But when you're walking, you stop. So you never dalat amos. You don't never walk dalat amos. The case the Gemara says, the Gemara says I think is talking about where you jumped. If you jumped dalat amos, then or you're zorik according to Ben Azai, then you would be chayiv for dalat amos only according to Ben Azai. Aval zorik mai. So the Gemara persists. If we're talking about Ben Azai, so if we throw mai niflo v'nisim mahalik aval zorik potter. If you threw it, you're potter. Right, why do you he's a magarer? So the Gemara is a magarer v'yotze tzricha. No, that is important in the Seifa. There's a chiddush in the Seifa, right? Technically, you're right. We could have said, right, he's zorik. We could have made a distinction, but there's a chiddush to say the Seifa. What's the chiddush? Dragging something, that's not called the way of hotzah. You have to do malachas on Shabbos the way they're normally done. Normally, when you carry something, you carry it in your hands, not that you drag it. Kamash malan. That's why chiddush, even though you're chayiv. Amai, what are we talking about? You're Rav or V. We're talking about a big purse, right? A really big purse. Maybe Louis Vuitton makes a bigger one. I don't know. These big purses they make. Even Rav or Orchehu, that's a lot. $100 million in there. It's not a big deal. Even that's normal. Even Zutre, if it's a very small one. Right, like a Coach one. I don't know. Maybe Coach makes smaller. Lab Orchehu, that's not normal. Of course, I'm chayiv. El Mitzi, we're talking about a middle one. Michael Kors. I honestly don't know the sizes of purse. I've seen Michael Kors. I've seen Coach. My wife was a small one, Tommy Hilfiger one. But I guess the most luxurious brand would probably have the biggest bags. What did I say? Gucci. What was the big one? I forgot the one. Louis Vuitton. Right, Louis Vuitton. Maybe that was the biggest one. So Elav and Mitzi, we're talking about a middle-sized bag. That's why it's normal. Where do you take it out? If he carried it out, he dragged it out of Sharabim, right? So he took from Shaliach to Sharabim, so he's chayav for Otzah. He didn't steal it. He didn't make a kinyan geneva. You only make a kinyan geneva when you pick it up, do a hagbah. That's the normal way you're kohen metalplin is through hagbah. But doing Mashiach in Rosh Hashanah, Mashiach Rosh Hashanah is not Kona. Either after Rosh Hashanah, if you took it out from Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah, from one house to another house, they're right next to each other. It's a Gneva Ika. It's a Shabbos Leika, right? Carrying from Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah is not Chayav on Shabbos. You did Mashiach, because when you transported it to your now house, that is Kona in your house. Mashiach is Kona by transferring it to your house, right? Mashiach is Kona in Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara says, "Lo tzricha da'afka l'tzidar sharabim." He took it out to the sides of a sharabim, the sidewalk. I don't know. Come on, Ikar Belezer da'amar sidar sharabim k'rush sharabim. He holds the sides of sharabim. It's like a sharabim. Isser Shabbos, Ika Isser Gneva Leika. Then it's like a sharabim. So you have Shabbos, but you don't have an Isser Gneva. Mashiach is not called sharabim. Ikar Rabbanan da'amar sidar sharabim lav sharabim. If like the Rabbanan who holds the sidewalk is not considered sharabim. Isser Gneva Ika Isser Shabbos Leika. You're stuck again, right? You don't have Isser of Shabbos. You only have an Isser of Gneva. Lolam Kerbelezer. Really, this brisa holds this. Mishnah holds Kerbelezer. Kerbelezer. Siddur Sharabim Sharabim Damu. Hani Mili Linyan Chiyuva. The Shabbos. When we say Siddur Sharabim is like Sharabim, that's only regarding Shabbos. The Zimna the Daki Rabim. I asked them. Sometimes not enough room in the middle of the street, right? Because especially they close down, like Modestorf here in Israel. They put gates on the edges of the city. No cars can pass through. So all the people are walking. In the middle of the street, there's no room on the side. People are going to push their way to the sidewalk. Aval Inyan Mikna Koni, but Siddur Sharabim is Kona. My time, a lot of people are not there generally, so therefore your Kona, even Siddur Sharabim, according to Belezer, normally for Gabi, when he says Siddur Sharabim is like Sharabim, it's only the Gabi Hilchos Shabbos. Gabi Geneva, Gabi Kinyan Geneva is considered to be a private domain, and you'll be kona with Mashicha. Rav Ashi, I'm going to see if Yad Lamat Mishlosh V'Kiblo. Rav Ashi gives a different answer. What are we talking about? you really dragged it out to Sarabim. Now, the problem is Sarabim, you're chayav for Hotzab, you're not chayav for Geneva. So the point is, he took his hand, he didn't drag it onto the ground of Sarabim. It was like a step, right? Sometimes people have a step coming out of their house. So he put his hands lower than 3 tefachim from the ground, or within 3 tefachim from the ground, which is considered lavud. 3 tefachim from the ground is considered like the ground itself. And it was makabel in his hand. It was makabel in his hand, so even though the Gemara says in Shabbos, you need daled al dal, hanach al makam dal dal. The ground is a big place, but your hand is a small place. The hand is considered significant, so it's considered hanach al makam dal v'dal, dal tefach by dal tefach. So it is considered Shabbos, and it's also considered you stole it, even though it's Sharab, it went into your hand, right? It went into your hand, so therefore you're kona with Yado, your Shalom is kona also. So his hand is kona even Sharabim, so therefore you have both of them stimulated Basakas. It's not exactly Basakas because right when he dragged it out into midair, he's chayav for Shabbos. He's only chayav for the Gneva once it gets to his hands. So that's the second teretz. There's 2 different terutzim over here. We're going to have to talk more in the Ian share which one is the correct teretz. Rava, like Rava says, Rava, Yado Shalom Chashu Lo Karba Al Arba. When he says Midim was have a Shabbos, it's like Dal Tvachim Dal Tvachim. Ravacha Masni Hachi. Ravacha learned like Rava, like he just said. We're talking about he was makabel in his hand. Ravina Masni L'Olam the Afka Sharab Sharab Nami Kanu. He says like the first teretz, basically that like Rabbi Lezer, see there's Sharabim for Shabbos, but not for Geneva. V'Tarvayu. The Afghan Sharab Nami Kona. You're calling Sharab also. But Tarvayu, but you could have Hamas Lisan Kamiflagi. Rav Acha and Ravina were arguing about the explanation of the following mission. This time, this isn't Baba Kama. Hayamoshka v'yotze. You're taking an animal. You want to steal an animal from your friend's house. I guess he has, let's say he has a parrot. I don't know, an African gay parrot. Hayamoshka v'yotze. Yomeis b'shabaylim. He's dragging it out. He drags it out of the cage. He doesn't pick it up. The cage is on the floor, let's say, and it dies before he actually picks it up. Putter, he's not chayiv because it wasn't kona. You're not chayiv, you're not responsible. If you stole something, so it's called kinyani geneva, you're chayiv. Even onus happens, you're chayiv to replace it. Like biosha, let's say he picked it up, or he actually took it out, mace, and then it died chayiv. He's chayiv because he was already kona for geneva. Ravina died from Reisha. Ravaka died from Yisei. Ravina died from Reisha. Ravina makes the diak from the Reisha of this Mishnah. He was dragging it and it died in his potter. Time of the mace bailim. The reason is because it died in the bailim. How it's seal? Mishus bailim or mace chayiv. If he would have taken it out from bailim, it would be chayiv. So you see he's chayiv. So Ravina was the one who said. We're talking about where he took it out to the Sharabim. So you can chone even Rosh Hashanah through Mashicha. He's going to say we're talking about he took it out to the Sidei Rosh Hashanah, right? And it's kona because even Sidei Rosh Hashanah you can be kona even through Mashicha. Ravacha diak me say Ravacha was midayik from the seif like bio shatzio tzad dumia da hakba. And compares picking it up to taking it out. Ma hakba the asher the shusay just like hakba when you pick something up even in the shusay bailim. Your koned afo tzanam yaseh the shusay also has to come into your shus. So therefore, he says we're talking about a case where he put his hand, even though he took it out into Sharabim, where you're not normally kona, but he put his hand siraf yado tachas gimal. He's kona by putting in his hands. Ravacha kasha reisha. The Ravina kasha sefer. Ravacha has a problem with the reisha. Ravina has a problem with the sefer. Reisha Ravacha lo kasha. Kamlo aseh the shusay versus bailim karina. As long as it doesn't come into his rishus, it's still called Rishus Bailim, so you can't make a diuk from the Seifa. Reisha Ravacha lo kasha. Ravacha makes a diuk from the Seifa. So the Reisha is not a kasha for him. It's still called Rishus Bailim. Ravina, Seifa Ravina lo kasha. Hotzah dumia dagba lo amrino. Just because it says Hotzah and Agba, we don't say automatically the same thing apply to each other. No, everyone you treat differently. Hagbal your kona, not necessarily. So therefore, you have to say we're not talking about a case of we put it in his hands. Here, if yado takas gimel, it's talking about a case where we hold like Siddur Sharabim, and that's why he's higher for the Mashicha. That's the conclusion of today's shir. Stay tuned for Enid Ben Sina. We're talking about a lot of fundamental things. Most importantly, Kimla the Rabbin have to be exactly basakas, or if you chayiv the misa before the mamon, does that pater, even afterwards. as long as they're close together in time. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the difference between Hotzah and Achnasa versus the Tolda of Havaras Dalar Sharabi. You're not going to want to miss it. Stay tuned. Coming up next.